Hello, my name is Paul Matthews, and welcome to a brief overview of payday filing and the leave without pay calculations, also known as LWOP, that we've made in the latest release of Greentree. What am I going to be covering today? Well, first of all, just to preface it by saying the changes I'm about to go through are only available in the 2019.1.0 release of Greentree, which came out on the 16th of January. So in this video today, I'm going to step through payday filing, both the setup and the processing for both employees and supplier payments. I'm also going to step through the changes we've made on anniversary date calculations on employees taking leave without pay and how that affects the anniversary date. Okay, let's move on. Payday filing. Bit of background or info if you're not aware of it. It's effective in New Zealand from the 1st of April 2019. So it's effective from that date, but you can opt in prior to the 1st of April 2019. Please see the IRD website for details. I'm not going to cover that bit here. So in this release of Greentree, this is the first stage of payday filing. What we're going to do is to create a CSV file which meets with the IRD requirements that they've laid out for payday filing. This file can then be taken and uploaded to the IRD using your My IRD account. The otherwise known as gateway solution, where a file is created in Greentree and directly uploaded into IRD, this is coming later in 2019. So in this release here, you create the file, then you take that file and upload it to your My IRD account. Okay, the setup. Straight into Greentree. So if you go to the HR, System, Module Control, the Payroll tab, and the Lodgement tab, we'll talk about lodgements all the way through this now. This is the process of creating the file, but we'll touch on it more and more, so you'll see what that is. You enter a date. This is effectively a live date. When do you want to start reporting to the IRD from? So as you can see, I've talked about where that screen is. Some of you may be familiar with where that screen is. Some may not, so that's why I've detailed it out. And you'll see that new tab that's there under payroll called Lodgement. And that field is a date field, and it said pays from via payday from. So effectively in that sketching screenshot there, it's coming from the 1st of April 2019. That will be effectively my live date in this setup. That's the first thing you need to do, is set that date. After that date has been set or entered, a lodgements option becomes available on the menu. This menu option only becomes available after that payday date, if that makes sense. So in the example I showed, it was the 1st of April 2019. That means I am unable to submit lodgements until that date or afterwards. Therefore, I will not see that lodgements menu option available. So you need to think through that process carefully about when you're going to go live from and what's the date. There's that lodgement screen that's available. So that will only appear after that date. Part of the upgrade, or in this release of Greentree, 2 new interfaces are available. The upgrade process puts these interfaces there. There is nothing you need to do. So this is a for notation, if you like. So in HR system payroll, the Inland Revenue Reporting Configuration Other tab, sorry, that's quite a long sentence there, but there's a screenshot following my path up above. Up in Other, there's two new interfaces which I've highlighted there. Those are set up as part of the upgrade process. You do not need to go and select those. And those interfaces are in line with the IRD specifications, so there is no need to alter them. Employee info is now validated by IRD. If the file has any invalid characters, the IRD rejects this file. So what that means is in the employees, the usual name, the address, and the email cannot contain any of these special characters, square brackets, backslashes, double quotes, or embedded commas. So now because you're filing this information up into the IRD have built more rules around this. Before you suddenly immediately panic and have to go off and check this, if the usual name and address contain any of these characters mentioned there, what we've done is we strip out these characters and replace them with a space. Otherwise, we could be spending a lot of time uploading files to Inland Revenue. But like all these things, it's good to do some good housekeeping and go back and review these. But we strip them out and put them in with spaces. Email addresses. Because we can't obviously control, well, IRD I should say, can't control special characters because of the nature of email addresses, these special characters are accepted. Or these characters are accepted by IRD, I should say. A to Z capitals, A to Z small letters, 0 to 9, at, dash, and that's underscore is the last one there. We can't strip out these characters, as because that would make the email address invalid if somebody has got some unusual characters in their email address. Therefore, you should use something like Explorer or jQuery within Greentree to go through these email addresses and make sure that they're okay. Now's the time to do it. Okay, so that covers the setup. As you can see, apart from setting the module control, where you turn on the date, be aware of that employee. There's new interfaces, the employee validation rules, I should say. Now we get on to the processing. Talked about lodgements already, but there is some terminology, and you've seen some of the tabs are called lodgements as well. So depending on your payroll processes, there are two ways to access this lodgement screen. That in turn creates the file that needs to be uploaded to Inland Revenue. From the Create Payment screen, once the payment has been created, the lodgement button becomes available. What does that mean? Clicking on the lodgement from the Create Payment simply takes you to the lodgement screen. Or you can go directly to the lodgement screen itself. So this depends on your processes, whether you want to do it at the time you create the payment or whether you want to do it after you've done several pays and then go directly to the lodgement screen. This will all make a bit more sense hopefully in a couple of minutes. Here's the Create Payment screen, which hopefully should be familiar to most people. Down on the bottom right there, you'll see I've highlighted and there's a Create Lodgement button. Again, that button will only appear if it's after my live date that I've set up initially and that I've actually gone and made the payment. You'll see there I've made a payment, just generically payment log 150, but it's been done. So my Create Lodgement is available. Otherwise, that button will not be available to you. Click on that button or go via the menu path that I talked about earlier. And it takes you into here. Again, I've done a reminder of where that screen is. HR Payroll Lodgements. The screen has several parts to it. Most of them are fairly obvious. I can now filter by pay group or branch if I'm limiting it down, but it's very much driven by the pay date. And you'll see a message in the top right there. No return has been generated for this date. We'll touch a little bit more of that in a second. Show the actions required. So I'm going to come back in and out of this screen here in a second. You'll see the action required, create return. That means that the system is looking to create the file, the return, that then needs to be loaded up to Inland Revenue. I've got 3 people there. 3 returns need to be done. Down the bottom, I've got what the action is, the interface. I don't need to touch that interface. Touched on earlier, these are created as part of the upgrade. File. So I can create the file name as to whatever I want to be. I can go on the buttons to save where I want to put this file that's going to be created. When I'm ready to go, I can click on the Create button on the bottom right hand of the screen there. Just going to flick into the next screen. Talked about that. Okay, select the payment which you wish to process up to, and Greentree, the payment date that should say process up to, and Greentree determines what actions there are. So these are statuses, if you like. Create return, which you saw. If no returns have been sent for that date, this is the action that's required. So the system is looking to create those returns to then subsequently go to Inland Revenue. Create an amendment. So if you lodged the return for that date, then this will then be the action. So in other words, if I need to send an amendment, I've made a correction and I need to resend the file. Recreate the return. If you've lodged the return, but it needs to be recreated as a whole. So no adjustments, it just needs to be recreated. I've accidentally deleted the file or I messed it up when I went to load it to Inland Revenue. I'm sure the options are kind of endless as to what you could do. Bit extreme, but yeah. Recreate the amendment. So we talked about recreating the return. So I can recreate the amendment. So if I've already sent an amendment, and I want to recreate that amendment file. Again, I've made an error and I need to recreate that amendment. So just going back, putting some context on those, I'll go back to the previous screen. There's the create return on the right hand side there, the action return, action required, I apologize. I then click on the create button at the bottom. There's my statuses. Then this is, sorry, I flicked quite quickly there. It's ready to go. Nothing's been done for that payment date. I then created a file. So the status changes. See the message at the top right, a return file was generated, so it's timestamping when it was done. As for the individual employees, it's also timestamping those if I need to refer back to it. And it's also put my file name in there that I created it on. Again, it was my payment date. This is, I'm going to flick back and forward a bit. So under the action, so this is the action where my cursor is highlighted at the bottom there, the action. So these are now the actions that I can do. I can either recreate the return because I've accidentally deleted the file or I made an error, or I can create an amendment. I've realized that there was something wrong with that file. I've gone back, I've made my adjustments. I can then create an amendment. So as my note says there, the action options are now limited to create return and create amendment, as the lodgement for that date has already been run. So create that file, CSV file. I don't need to touch that file. It's in the correct format. I then need to log into my IRD account and upload said file. Okay, that goes through the processing for the employees, creating that file, uploading it. Now for the suppliers. From that lodgement screen that we've had a look at, click on the suppliers option. You may or may not have noticed it, but it's on the left-hand side there. The default is employees. Excuse me. Then what is displayed is suppliers who are set up as withholding tax suppliers and will only appear once the payment has been made to that supplier and therefore deducting the withholding tax. For example, there's that same lodgement screen. There's my supplier. I had a supplier set up there. There's my withholding tax amount that I've sent. And again, the statuses are the same for the suppliers as they are for the employees. You notice that I've got a payment date range there, from payment to payment. So within those dates, I may have paid several suppliers. And again, I create the file, the CSV file, in the same way that I did for the employees. So the status is the same. Create the return, create amendment if I need to make a change, recreate the return if there was something wrong and I need to regenerate the file, or recreate the amendment. So if I made amendment, but again, there was still an error with that file, deleted it, etc., I want to recreate it. And follows the same process to export that file and to upload it to the Inland Revenue. A note here. If the site, or if you do not have payroll, but you use withholding tax, then you use this option. Obviously, you won't have the lodgement screen to go into, so you've got the withholding tax file. So under Process, Accounts Payable, Create Withholding Tax File, there it is there. That's what you see. So the options are the same. The interface you won't need to change. I've changed nothing on that screen apart from those dates that I was coming into, and create the output file. Okay, also with Payday Filing, New and Departing Employees file. Employers from the 1st of April 2019 must report on all new and departing employee details to Inland Revenue. On that basis, a new export file has been created in line with IRD specifications. So again, another file that comes out of Greentree. So under HR, Payroll, Other Functions, New and Departing Employee file, you put a date range in. Again, the interface is fine, you won't need to change that, and that's the file that you're going to export. You create it. Just a point to note on this, the export file is produced with IRD specifications. Apologies for repeating myself. There's a change in the country code, so if you au fait enough with the Greentree setup, NZL is the correct ISO 3166 standard. And so an additional field has been added into the country code maintenance to save people who have called it maybe something else, NZ, NZD, etc. So we've put that field in there. So you won't need to make any changes. We have accounted for that because that country code is exported as part of that employee file. Additional features and some notes as part of this. So things to note. Creating a final or nil return from the lodgement screen. Okay, so you may have noticed it down the bottom there. There they are there, a nil return and a final return. Just be aware of what the differences are between a nil return and a final return. If you are unsure, then I would be checking the Inland Revenue website for that definition. Duplicate files. If you load the same file twice to the IRD will reject the second file as a duplicate. But if the files are different, it will accept the second one. So you've done two in a row or two quite close to each other. But if it has the same employee in it and the same paying period, maybe you've made some manual changes to the file, which you may need to do in rare circumstances. As what's in the first file, it will get added to the first file. So the inland revenue will deem that those payments have also been made and will therefore add that together. So be aware of that. IRD rejects an upload file with any negative pay amounts. Therefore, what you file to the NRAM revenue must only be positive values. It will reject the file. Okay, additional features and notes, part 2. Registered agent. So under this part here, HR system options, Payday. There's a tab there for Payday. You need to set that. Set as true and enter your details. Okay, that concludes my section on payday filing. Hopefully that's given you a detailed enough overview as to what the setup is, what the processing is, and the things to just be aware of. Okay, in the second part of this video, I want to cover the accrued annual leave for employees taking leave without pay. Gosh, that's a mouthful. So let's cover what this is talking about. So in the 2019.1 release, changes have been made to take account of employees taking leave without pay, or LWOP, and the ability to change an anniversary date for accruing the leave. Just to note, this only relates to an employee that is accruing leave. It does not include sick leave. Probably goes without saying, but it's just written in there just to remind people. Okay, so what have we done in Greentree? So in the HR employee maintenance, there's a new button on the right-hand side, Leave Without Pay, highlighted down there. Also on the employee maintenance, on the defaults tab, there's a next anniversary date. So that'll default in when an employee is set up. Now we're going to talk about changing it, but that's also new. Okay. To jump straight into an example here. So from the employee maintenance screen, I've clicked on the Leave Without Pay button, which opens this leave dates box. So the start and end dates on that screen there represents the dates of the employee that is taking leave without pay. So for example, if I took the whole of February off, the start date would be the 1st of February 2019 and the end date would be the 28th of February 2019. But those dates could be anything. You'll notice that the current anniversary date is defaulting in. Next anniversary date is blank because when I enter those dates, the new anniversary date is calculated. So again, to take that example that I quoted, so I'm taking 4 weeks off from those two dates. The current anniversary was the 21st of January. The new anniversary will become the 11th of February, which is 4 weeks from the 21st of January, less a week, so it's moved on 3 weeks. So you may need to kind of think that through, but that's how it's calculated, that new anniversary date based on that. Therefore, my leave is now accrued to that new anniversary date. On the HR employee maintenance screen, you'll see that that next anniversary date has moved on according to those calculations that I've made. Okay, there's now a new event type called anniversary date change, and it's been added in. So you'll see there I've gone on to the events tab on the HR employee. On the event type, I've just filtered there. There's an anniversary date changed, and that timestamps by who, what it is, and the details around it. So it tracks those changes for us. I could also change the anniversary date manually. So back onto that HR employee maintenance screen, I've gone into that defaults tab, that next anniversary date. So I might have done the calculation separately. I've put that's the date I want. This warning message is displayed because it's not just going to let me do what I kind of want to do, unfortunately. It says I've changed that. Do you want to save it? Yes, I do. That's why I did it in the first place. Which then presents me with the following dialog box. So in other words, it still wants the start date. The rest of those dates are calculated. So again, I've taken from the 1st of February. Okay, again, I'll have a look at that event type after it's been created. That one I'm just showing you the detail. That's been put in there. It's bringing all those dates through for me and putting it on that event. Okay, so that concludes the leave without pay calculation that goes on the HR employee maintenance, how that's come about. Hope that's given you enough of an overview, and thanks for your time and watching. Cheers.